Real power doesn't always sit in a palace or scream from a podium. Sometimes it whispers. It is that bottle of medicine you grab at midnight, the mall you automatically drive to on the weekend, or the banking app you trust with your entire life savings. Before you even notice, your daily routine is operating inside a system built by a wealthy family you have never met and will probably never see on TV. This isn't a story about fame. This is a story about invisible control. In the Philippines, true influence has never been loud. It works quietly, patiently, and relentlessly. Behind our everyday comforts stand women who don't chase headlines, yet they shape the economy with decisions made far away from the public eye. These aren't celebrities, they are architects, and every wealthy family in this story has mastered one rule: if you control what people need every single day, you control the future. What makes these women extraordinary isn't just the size of their bank accounts, but the sharpness of their vision. They didn't build empires on trends. They built them on habits. Eating, healing, banking, shopping, connecting, brick by brick, product by product, decade by decade. A wealthy family turned simple necessities into billion-dollar fortresses. Their power isn't dramatic, it is dependable. And that is exactly why it is unstoppable. Tonight, we are starting a journey into the lives of the richest Jewish women in the Philippines. You might not recognize all their names, but you definitely know their influence. It is woven into your schedules, your cities, and your sense of security. As we count down these modern matriarchs, pay attention not just to their net worth, but to how quietly they built it all. Before we dive deeper, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from right now? If you are in Asia, type the number 1 in the comments. If you are in the United States, type 2. Europe, type 3. Anywhere else in the world, type 4. And if you enjoy powerful stories about dynasties, influence, and legacy, make sure you smash that subscribe button and stick with us for what comes next. Long before the billion-dollar valuations and global buyouts, every empire starts with something painfully boring. A tiny shop, a single product, a narrow opening that most folks miss. What separates a massive empire from a forgotten business is timing, discipline, and an almost obsessive understanding of human behavior. For one wealthy family at the heart of the Philippine consumer economy, that understanding started inside kitchens, pantries, and neighborhood stores. Back in the late 1970s, the Philippines was changing fast. Cities were growing, families were working longer hours, and convenience was becoming a silent demand. Most businesses chased size, but lost their soul. This wealthy family took a different path. They focused on one question: what do people rely on when time, money, and energy are tight? The answer was simple: affordable food that never let you down. What followed wasn't an overnight explosion, but a controlled expansion. While competitors rushed to do everything, this empire perfected mass production without losing that familiar touch. Keeping the flavor consistent became the strategy. Distribution became dominance. Over time, their products stopped being a choice and became the default. When a brand reaches that level, marketing doesn't matter anymore. The habit does the selling. The genius of this wealthy family wasn't just innovation, it was self-control. They rarely chased the spotlight. They plowed profits right back into the business instead of broadcasting their success. While others measured power by how often they were seen, they measured it by how deep they could reach. Millions of households, millions of repeat buys, millions of decisions made unconsciously in their favor. Eventually, this discipline opened doors beyond the country's borders. Buying up companies overseas signaled a shift from being a local leader to a global contender. Yet, even as the empire grew, the leadership stayed deliberately invisible. No viral interviews, no personal branding, just products quietly reinforcing loyalty every single day. This is how real consumer empires are built. Not through noise, but through reliability. Not through ego, but through systems. And as we move forward, you will see this same philosophy echoed again and again across different industries, different fortunes, and different women who understood that silence, combined with control, is the loudest power of all. If consumer goods shape habits, then real estate shapes destiny. Cities decide who moves up, who stays behind, and who controls the opportunities. In the Philippines, entire skylines have been quietly molded by a wealthy family that understood one truth early on. Land isn't just property, it is leverage. Whoever plans the city controls the future flow of money, movement, and power. This empire didn't start with towering skyscrapers or flashy developments. It started with financing, risk checks, and patience. The early years were spent learning how money acts under pressure, how borrowers crash, and how assets survive bad times. That financial instinct later became the foundation for a real estate strategy built not on guessing, but on toughness. When markets shifted, this wealthy family didn't retreat, they repositioned. Their projects were never just about the buildings. They were ecosystems. Residential communities fed commercial zones, offices drove traffic to retail centers, banks funded the very developments rising from the dirt. Each piece supported the others, creating a self-sustaining loop of influence that protected the empire from any single industry collapsing. Diversification wasn't just for show, it was protection by design. What makes this strategy so powerful is scale with intention. Entire districts were planned years before the demand even existed. Roads arrived before the traffic. Capital moved before competitors even understood the opportunity. This isn't luck. It is foresight honed by decades of financial discipline. Over time, thousands of families lived, worked, and invested inside spaces shaped by decisions they never saw happen. Publicly, the leadership stayed low-key. No dramatic statements, no public fights. Power here was exercised through zoning maps, loan sign-offs, and long-term development rights. This wealthy family understood that permanence beats speed, and that cities reward those who think in generations, not financial quarters. As we move forward, watch the pattern forming. Different industries, different faces, the exact same philosophy. Control the framework, and influence follows naturally. Power doesn't always rise from concrete and steel. Sometimes it travels through light, data, and invisible signals moving at unimaginable speeds. In the modern Philippines, digital infrastructure has become just as critical as roads or bridges. One wealthy family recognized this shift long before it was obvious, betting everything on a future most people couldn't see yet. For years, internet access in the country was way behind global standards. Slow speeds were tolerated, frustration was normal, and competition was limited. Where others saw barriers, this group saw an opening. Instead of patching up old systems, they made a bold move. Build a network from scratch, designed entirely around fiber optics. It was expensive, risky, and deeply unpopular with cautious investors at the time. The early years were brutal. Money was buried underground in cables nobody noticed. Growth was slow, and profits were thinner than expected. Yet, this wealthy family understood something critical about infrastructure businesses. The payoff comes when demand finally catches up. They weren't racing competitors, they were racing the future. That future showed up suddenly. A global crisis forced millions to work, study, and live online. Overnight, reliable internet became a necessity, not a luxury. While others scrambled to adapt, this network was already in place. Years of quiet preparation turned into explosive growth almost instantly, turning patience into power. What followed was one of the most defining moments in Philippine corporate history. Going public injected massive capital, speeding up expansion nationwide. Homes that were once disconnected were suddenly online. Businesses scaled faster. Entire communities plugged into the global economy. This wealthy family didn't just profit from the digital age, they enabled it. The leadership stayed understated through it all. No celebrity executives, no dramatic declarations, just data, execution, and scale. This chapter proves a crucial lesson. Those who invest early in what society will soon depend on don't need the spotlight. The results speak loud enough. Some empires are built on ambition. Others are built on trust. In a country where access to healthcare can define survival, one wealthy family constructed a business not around luxury or speed, but around reliability. Their influence isn't measured in skyscrapers, but in neighborhoods, street corners, and late-night lights that never turn off. This story begins in tough times. Post-war devastation left cities broken and families vulnerable. Medicine was scarce, expensive, and often out of reach for regular folks. Instead of chasing high profit margins, this wealthy family focused on volume, affordability, and presence. They introduced a radical idea for the time. Healthcare should be available when people need it, not just when it is convenient for business hours. Innovation followed necessity. Extended hours became the standard. Delivery systems moved faster than the competition. Locations multiplied strategically, ensuring that no community felt abandoned in a crisis. Over time, familiarity turned into loyalty. Parents trusted the brand. Doctors relied on its consistency. Entire generations grew up seeing the same sign as a symbol of reassurance. For this dynasty, leadership wasn't about making headlines. It was about keeping your head down and getting to work. They didn't care about fame, they cared about systems. We're talking obsessive tuning of inventory, logistics, and training. While the competition was busy chasing clout and flashy expansion, these guys played for coverage. The result? Total market dominance, built on being rock-solid, reliable, not just looking good for the cameras. Even as the cash piled up, the playbook stayed the same. Serve the people first, scale up second, and let the profits follow. That simple philosophy turned a mom-and-pop shop into a national powerhouse. It proves a massive point you'll see again and again in this story. The empires that last are the ones that make themselves essential to your daily survival. Some billions are made selling things you can hold, others are made moving the money itself. Banking might seem boring or invisible, but it's the gatekeeper deciding which dreams launch and which ones die on a napkin. One family cracked the code here. They realized that if you structure finance right, you're not just running a business, you're building the spine of the entire economy. They broke ground back when the Philippines was desperate for stability, not some flashy new tech. Their strategy? Old-school discipline. Conservative loans, tight governance, and relationships built to last. They didn't gamble on risky quick wins. They banked on trust. As their vaults filled up, so did their political capital. Before long, the nation's money was flowing through pipes they designed. What made them different was how smart they diversified. Banking was just the engine. Around it, they bolted on insurance, car dealerships, real estate, and massive infrastructure deals. It was a perfect ecosystem. If one sector took a hit, another picked up the slack. They didn't just stumble into this safety net, they engineered it. Real power happens where you can't see it in closed boardrooms, not on billboards. For this clan, it wasn't about selling you a product, it was about being too big to fail. Massive national projects live or die based on their loan approvals. The whole economy basically bends to their gravity without most people even noticing. From grandfather to grandson, they kept it tight. No scandals, no paparazzi, just centralized command. They didn't care about next quarter's stock price. They cared about where they'd be in 50 years. In a part of the world that's often chaotic, that kind of steady hand made them indispensable to the nation's growth. Here's the kicker. Some families sell you stuff, while others finance the future. As we climb higher up this list, watch how inherited power, if you handle it right, can explode into something way bigger than anything the founders ever imagined. People get inheritance wrong. They think it's a free ride, but really, it's a pressure cooker. All that expectation can either crush you or force you to level up. That was the challenge for one family when a massive conglomerate got handed down to the kids. Their job? Take a dinosaur of a legacy and drag it into the 21st century. They were already everywhere. Snacks in your pantry, the airline you fly, the phone network you use, the mall you shop at. But being big doesn't save you when the guard changes. Markets flip. People change. What worked for Grandpa doesn't work today. They knew that if you just try to preserve the ashes, you'll eventually burn out. You have to reinvent the fire. The new bosses didn't walk in with egos blazing. They came up from the floor, learning the grunt work before touching the strategy. This bred leaders who actually understood the logistics and the people. They didn't blow everything up, they just upgraded the operating system, better tech, smoother supply chains, and a brand refresh that felt new but familiar. They also flipped the script on their image. Instead of being scary corporate overlords, they became approachable. They cracked jokes. They opened up. It wasn't weakness, it was genius. It's a lot harder to hate a billionaire family when they feel like real human beings rather than cold statues. Behind the curtain, they kept growing, but carefully. No reckless bets, just calculated moves. Every single check they wrote had to answer one question: will this still matter in 20 years? That long game mentality is how you turn a big inheritance into a permanent dynasty. This story proves that legacy isn't about keeping the pile of money high. It's about keeping it relevant. If you play your cards right, inheritance isn't a ceiling that limits you, it's a launch pad. Retail looks easy, but at this level, it's psychological warfare. One family conquered the market by realizing a simple truth. When times are tough, nobody cares about luxury. They want certainty. They built their entire empire on that reality, giving people what they need, not what they dream about. They made their move during a recession when everyone else was scared stiff. While competitors were pulling back, these guys hit the gas. They opened massive stores with rock-steady prices. They didn't have to convince anyone to shop there. They just promised that every dollar or peso would go the distance. The real genius move was locking in loyalty. They didn't just sell to shoppers, they courted the small business owners and resellers, turning them into partners for life. This wove their brand into the very fabric of the local economy. When you control the distribution like that, you don't just sell soap, you control who gets access to it. Growth was strictly by the numbers. They didn't open stores for ego, they opened them because the data said so. Every company they bought made the machine stronger. The leadership stayed out of the tabloids and focused on what mattered: logistics, pricing power, and ruthless efficiency. It just goes to show that retail giants aren't built on glitter and hype. They're built on trust, showing up every day and knowing exactly what regular folks need to get by. Some empires are so huge they become invisible. You flip a light switch or turn on the tap, and you never wonder who's getting paid for it. One family quietly built the physical skeleton of the Philippines. They don't need a logo on every corner because they own the infrastructure you rely on to survive. They forged this power through concrete, volts, and raw resources. Sure, you see the roads, bridges, and skyscrapers, but underneath all that, they own the power plants, the mines, and the water pipes. They didn't just build the city, they owned the life support systems that keep it breathing. It was all about vertical integration. Own the cement, own the electricity, own the grid. By controlling the raw inputs, they bulletproofed themselves against market swings and got a stranglehold on national development. A quiet nod in their boardroom sends ripples through neighborhoods for generations. The family leadership stayed disciplined, looking way down the road. You rarely saw them on TV. Their clout didn't come from charisma, it came from being absolutely necessary. Their fortune grew right alongside the nation, making them essential partners in progress, not just some distant rich guys in a tower. This brings us to a heavy truth. The most powerful families are usually the ones you never see. Why? Because they've woven themselves so deep into your daily life that you can't separate them from reality. At the top of the mountain, you have to ask, what's the point of all this power? Looking at these stories, one pattern screams out. None of these dynasties got there by chaos or luck. They used systems, patience, and a massive long-term vision. These fortunes weren't built overnight, and they definitely weren't an accident. The biggest takeaway here is focus. Retail, banking, tech, doesn't matter. Every one of these families found a core human need and built a fortress around it. They didn't want applause. They wanted to be essential. They invested early, ignored the haters, and waited for the world to catch up. The money followed the discipline, never the other way around. There's a human lesson here, too. You don't have to be the loudest in the room to run the show. Many of these leaders, especially the women, led with quiet restraint and rock-solid stability. They shaped millions of lives not by being tyrants, but by being reliable. In a crazy world, it's a reminder that you can have massive ambition while still serving the greater good. If you're chasing success, listen up. Stop thinking in moments and start thinking in decades. Build your skills before you chase the status. Build systems before you buy the symbols. The real legacy isn't the number in your bank account. It's how many people's lives are better because you existed. When a family understands that, they don't just get rich, they become immortal. If these stories shifted your perspective on power and legacy, don't just sit there, make a move. Hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the hidden empires running the world. Smash the like if you learned something, and share this with a friend who values strategy over noise. Drop a comment below, and let me know which story hit you the hardest.